Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Malcolm Maestrel, and I'm a Membership Services Coordinator with IAAP. Thank you for joining us for the next webinar of our 2023 Professional Education webinar series, Digital Accessibility. We're excited to continue the series with today's webinar, Ensuring Your Digital Assets Are Accessible. But before we begin, we have a few general housekeeping items to go over. Closed captioning is provided. To enable closed captioning, select the CC icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. The stream text links for English, French, German, Spanish, and Swedish will be posted in the chat as well. American Sign Language interpretation is also provided. Microphones are muted to prevent any background noise or disruptions. Please post your questions in the Q&A. Questions will be saved until the end of the presentation, and the chat will be monitored for general dialogue and technical issues. Today's webinar will be recorded and available in our webinar archives, and we will send out a copy of the recording and presentation to everyone who registered. A link to the slides has been posted in the chat as well. And now I would like to turn today's program over to our presenter, AmyJune Hineline.
Thank you, Malcolm. I'm just going to share my screen. And I want to thank Heather, Beth, and Lizzie today, too. They're doing a lot of work for me. So I have a little bit of housekeeping, too. Usually I talk about captions, but captions are taken care of. Those links were shared in the chat window. There are images in my slides. Most of them are decorative. But some do add some context, so I'll explain those as they go. But if I don't explain an image, it's mostly because it's decorative and adds no value to the presentation. There is a link to my slide deck. It's a bit.ly link, IAAP-A11Y-security. And the reason I share that ahead of time is the images do have alt tags if you need them. And also there's some valuable links that you can follow along with. My name is AmyJune Hineline. I am currently the community architect for the certification program at the Linux Foundation. I just started there last week. It's a new role for me. I am a Drupal core mentor. I really appreciate teaching people how to give back to their open source projects. But who am I to talk about accessibility? For one, in a previous lifetime, I was a hospice nurse. So I really understand how some people struggle with doing basic things like checking email and having some privacy around that. And then I am disabled. I am physically disabled and I have hearing loss. And so I'm a huge advocate for myself as well as others who don't necessarily find a voice in advocacy. Up on the slide, you can see there's a couple of links to LinkedIn and to my Mastodon space. Also, I'm an organizer of accessibility talks, A11Y-TALKS, where we give an online meetup every month that we talk about accessibility. And you're able to earn IAAP continuing education units for watching that Ally Talks, as well as presenting for Ally Talks. So something to keep in mind. I'm a Quaker, and I believe the wish for peace resides in all of us, and violence and war are never the option. And I'm taking this space to hold in all the light for those who live in the Ukraine and whose lives are in danger and disrupted by fear. I hold in light the refugees fleeing from the Ukraine, the Russians who are shocked and dismayed at the course their government has taken, the decision makers, the soldiers, and all of those courageously working for peace. Thank you. Here's a picture of Spot. He's behind a closed door right now. So if you hear some knocking around, that's Spot. He helps me program. So sometimes there might be some extra spaces and extra characters in there where he's run across the keyboard and I haven't noticed. So any typos, we'll just blame my peer programmer. So what are we going to talk about today? We'll go over some basic accessibility concepts along with some specific guidelines, because I don't want to assume anyone's skill level, but I also don't want to dig deep into accessibility 101. And then we'll look at some security options and what some alternatives might be that might be more accessible for your consumer base. So WCAG, WCAG guidelines. These are the web content accessibility guidelines, and the goal is to provide a single shared standard for web accessibility. And these guidelines are for web developers, web authoring tool developers, web accessibility tool developers, and really anyone who wants that standard for web accessibility. Accessibility, inclusion, and user experience are all very different things. They complement each other, but they're different. I just like to make that differentiation. POUR, this is our high-level acronym for the 4 basic principles around accessibility. We've got perceivable, which means the user can identify content and interface elements by means of the senses. Operable means that a person can use and control successfully the buttons, the navigation, and any other interactive elements. Understandable, users should be able to understand and comprehend the content and learn and remember how to use the interface. So that's from page to page, making sure that it's understandable. And then robust. And a lot of the concepts I'm going to be talking about today come from this concept, where your user should be able to choose the technology they use to interact with our digital assets. These are our websites, our online documents, our multimedia, and all those other informational formats. So breaking it down even more, excuse me, we want to make sure that it's easy to see, so we accommodate those visual needs. The Center for Disease Control here in the United States reports that 12 million people 40 years and over in the United States have some sort of vision loss, including 1 million who are blind. But remember, there's other factors like cracked cell phone screens, or perhaps we're outside working and there's a glare. This is a beautiful picture of someone's eye with a rainbow running through it. So you see the beautiful colors of the rainbow in the iris and across her upper eyelid. We want to make sure that our assets are easy to interact with, so we accommodate motor needs. These are people who live with palsies from things like Parkinson's, or paraplegia from something like ALS, or perhaps like a motorcycle accident. But it's also folks who are maybe, carrying a big box and they're on the train and their hands are otherwise occupied. And this is a picture of a computer with some different controllers around it. Auditory needs. We want to make sure that we accommodate auditory needs and make it easy to hear. When we address these needs, we help individuals who are in noisy environments, as well as our deaf or hard of hearing friends. And here we have a black and white picture of someone signing. And then that last concept is cognitive needs. Make sure it's easy to understand. This can be people who are distracted, who have a difficult time focusing, or maybe they have some sort of cognitive loss. So here we see a young man who has Down syndrome smiling with his father. 15% of the world's population live with a disability. That's a lot of people, and that includes people who are in this webinar right now. Remember, as we age, we become a little bit more disabled with time. Our eyes, our hearing, our body starts to deteriorate. There are temporary disabilities, like going to the doctor and having LASIK, or maybe you fell down and you broke your arm and you're in a cast for 6 weeks. These are temporary. There are situational disabilities, like your children running off with your mouse battery, so you no longer have a mouse for the day, or perhaps you're using that smartphone or tablet in the bright sun. And of course, we have permanent disabilities. These are people who live with disabilities 24 hours, 7 days a week, all the time. And there's a new one. Well, not new, but something I just recently kind of concept I became aware of was these episodic disabilities. These are lifelong conditions, things like HIV, cancer, Lyme disease, where some days are better than others. People living with episodic disabilities experience periods of fluctuating health. Their needs are not consistent. As a reminder, depression can be episodic. And I say this at every talk I give, remember that not every disability can be seen. There's dizziness, there's cognitive abilities, there's brain injuries, there's learning differences, there's autism, there's, migraines, as well as those mental health issues, remember that we can't always see these disabilities. And it's about providing equal access to the information on our digital assets. It's a basic human right and not a special privilege. I love this story because I'm always called an edge case because I need captions and I wear my glasses. And then all of a sudden when people are presenting, I can't see anything. So Eric Meyer said, when you call something an edge case, you're really defining the limits of what you care about. So I invite y'all to think about this quote as we talk about disabilities, because every person is unique and every person has basic human rights, and inclusion is very important. User agents. So I'm going to talk about some definitions around some of the user agents. This is assistive technology. We'll see it abbreviated as AT. It's really any software, device, or equipment that helps people work around challenges that they have in learning and communicating and being able to function on the web. User agents. Lots of us think about screen readers first. They're used to listen to the content of the web page. Essentially, they convert text to speech. We should keep in mind that screen readers can be used along with visuals on a web page for folks with cognitive challenges. Screen magnification software, I use this all the time. My default is plus 125 because my glasses, like I said, I have to plus every year to see that screen. And screen magnification is essentially its name. It's used to enlarge the screen content. So it makes things a little bit easier for us to read, especially if we live with a partial sight, partial vision loss. It's used by people to enlarge the content, but speech magnifiers or screen magnifiers also sometimes have text-to-speech functionality as well. And then I want to go through some alternative input devices because this is important when we talk about security on the web. There's eye tracking, a system that monitors eye movements that helps control the mouse, and it detects blinking to initiate mouse clicks. There's accelerators. This is software that helps reduce the effort needed to type or click for some of us who might have a palsy or maybe we're missing a hand. And also keyboard customization. You can map the keys, you can assign shortcuts, you can set filters and sticky keys to support single-handed typing. Some of us have pop-up and animation blockers to keep us from being distracted while we're on a web page, and these are plugins or software tools that stop those automated pop-ups, or sometimes they stop the redirection to the focus to them, but they also provide options to stop, pause, and hide animations. On this slide, there's an image of a refreshable Braille display. It's a mechanical terminal that displays Braille characters by raising and lowering the dots dynamically. And then we have things like reading assistants. These can help customize the font, the size, the shaping. We have dictionaries and thesauruses and tooltips that might pop up. And we have page maps. These are small image of the entire web page with usually a visual indicator highlighting the portion within the page that they're currently viewing. So let's get into some of the security stuff. We have accessible authentication. That's a tricky word for me, so I have to go slow. Authentication is really our first defense when it comes to online security. When authentication requires user input, best practices should include giving your users options and choices. And I'll iterate this through the program. It's about giving your users options and choices. So I'm also going to sprinkle in some WCAG success criteria along when I talk about some of these concepts. So the first one is talking about accessible authentication, and this is 3.3.7. Really, the bottom line is you want to ensure that there's an accessible, easy to use, and secure method to log in, access content, and undertake tasks. So who does this success criteria benefit? Well, it benefits people with cognitive issues relating to memory. This can be dementia, ADHD, dissociated amnesia. This criteria also helps our dyslexic folks, individuals who live with dyscalculia, who have sometimes issues around numbers. It helps people with perception processing limitations. You know, they should be able to authenticate regardless of the level of their cognitive abilities. And there's a link at the bottom of the slides that you can get more information about this single criteria. So gated content. Gated content requires a user to complete a form or purchase a subscription to get to the content. You have to do some gatekeeping. So gated content can be online materials like white papers, articles, and videos that require users to fill out a form before they can access them. White papers, marketers create white papers to educate the audience about a particular issue or explain or promote a particular methodology. We have ebooks. These are our electronic books. We have webinars and learning courses, and sometimes those are behind a paywall. Product demos will ask for email so they can track and sell the products. We have curated emails that sometimes you have to provide, a login information. And then also with this gated content, and it could include things like forums to exclusive communities or contest entry forms, things like Discourse or Discord or Reddit. And along with access to surveys and forms, they can be gated with having a logged in user or sign up for a promotion. And I have a picture here of a series of doorways tunneling down. It's really neat, stone doorways. So on to some common security measures. We're perhaps familiar with most of them. We see Captchas, CAPTCHAS, all over the internet. But what are they? They are completely automated public Turing tests to tell humans and computers apart. But I got that last part backwards. To tell computers and humans apart. And that's why we see those letters CAPTCHA. We've seen them be as simple as, I am not a robot. We've seen them complex, like the image I have up on the slide. It's very difficult to read. I have no idea what it's asking. The letters are garbled and there's some scribbled. And how are you going to know if you have low vision what that means? But sometimes we see images. Sometimes we have to listen to letters, maybe do a math puzzle. But often lately we see the checkbox asking if we're a human or a bot. So I have a picture of a math equation here. And I don't know about you, but I don't remember first year algebra, so I would never be able to get past this. But even simple or more straightforward math questions can be difficult for some users. So be careful when you use math equations. We also want to remember that not everyone can see the screen and identify images. If we have those, identify all the ducks in the squares. When we talk about standard image accessibility, usually we include alt text, but think about that a little bit. When we're providing alt text, it defeats the purpose of weeding out the machines, because then they're able to parse and read the alt text. Sometimes we do simple questions like 4+2. Again, this can be challenging for folks with cognitive processing issues. So we want to offer alternatives to Captchas that are accessible for our entire audience, including people who have vision, hearing, and neurological disabilities. Timers are another security measure, or time-based passwords. So we have another WCAG guideline around the use of timers. It's 2.2, and that specifically says we want to have enough time. We want to provide our users with enough time to finish their tasks. Not everyone can zip through a form or enter their credit card information at top speed. So we want to be sure, and I have some individual criteria up here that extend that. I have 2.2.1, 2.2.2, etc. But I'm just going to read what they are. So we want to make sure our timing is adjustable, or that there's no time limit. We want to be sure that interruptions can be postponed or suppressed by the user, that there's a pause button if possible. And when an authenticated session expires, it would be really nice if we allow the user to continue the activity without loss of the data or having to re-authenticate. Have you ever been on a form and it's timed out and then you go back to it and all of your data is gone? That can be really frustrating. And we want to make sure that certain users are warned of the duration of any user inactivity that could cause data loss. So perhaps, if someone's using a screen reader and they're getting down, we have a timer that might announce, not every second, not every 15 seconds, but at a doable rate, letting them know that their time is running out. So here I have an image of a session timeout page. You can see that it's a pop-up that comes up and it says your session is about to expire. You have 4 minutes and 49 seconds, and then there's a reset button. Typically, we see this at about the 5-minute mark. But people with disabilities may require more time to complete some activities. And, those time sessions can pose problems. Someone who has a reading disability, such as dyslexia, likely will take longer in understanding instructions and text on a form. Perhaps someone who is deaf may be more comfortable with sign language than the written word. So having all that written word on the screen slows them down with comprehension, and incidentally, this holds true for our non-native speakers of our website's language too. So you can see, not only people who are disabled benefit from, having more time, but people who are, maybe learning a new language can benefit from having more time to digest and interpret what's going on the web page. Someone who relies on screen reading software, because they're blind, or maybe they have a learning disability or some vision loss, they might take more time locating the elements on the page or understanding the page's layout, especially if the page changes from page to page. So unless that time limit is longer than 20 hours, all timed sessions should be able to be turned off, adjusted, or extended, unless it's essential to the activity. So what's an essential activity that needs a timer? Sometimes paying bills online, buying concert tickets. This one really frustrates me because I love concert tickets, but I'm doing my concert thing and I'm sitting in line, and I'm waiting on the queue. I'm about ready to enter my credit card information, but my credit card's upstairs. So here's this added stress of, oh no, I need front row Grateful Dead tickets, but I got to go get my credit card. So, everyday activities can benefit from having that extended time as well. Here we have an image of part of an app for time-based one-time passwords. We sometimes see this abbreviated TOTP. This is code this code input, taking from one device to another or even the same device, can hinder people with sight or cognitive or motor skill impairments. It might be difficult for some folks with cognitive processing issues to take code from one screen to the other in the designated time allotted. You can see in this image that there's also along with the code, there's sort of a timer that's going down, to the right side of it. And then when the timer runs out, it's a new code. Sometimes the authenticator applications and messaging apps are not compatible with screen readers. So it's something to think about. And again, to iterate, turn off the timing, adjust the timing, extend the timing. What are some other verification methods for making sure we say who we say, making sure we are who we say we are? Well, we have biometrics. This is a technical term to refer to a human's physical or behavioral traits. And I want to talk about some of these biometrics. We have voice recognition. Me today, I have a grovelly throat from allergies and coming back from a conference. So someone may have a sore throat, or maybe their microphone isn't working properly. You've got some dust in there. There could be a lot of background noise. You could be at a concert, or maybe you're at a conference or on a train where your voice doesn't quite get picked up through these metrics. We have facial recognition. It does not require sight or hearing or significant motor skills, making it quite ideal for many users. But there are situations that can affect facial recognition. I'm still wearing a mask in most places. It affects me when I'm going through customs. I have to take the mask off because, they want my whole face. There's hijabs, there's burqas, there's other face coverings. There's beards grown during COVID. There's weight fluctuations. The size and shape of your face can fluctuate with weight loss or gain. And those can affect facial features as well. The next one is fingerprint scanning. Perhaps you've been shoveling snow and your hands are chapped or blistered, or maybe you've been working in the garden and have dirt filling in the crevices of your fingerprint. There's always the possibility that someone doesn't have any hands, or they did and now they don't, or maybe the use of them is temporarily disabled, because they're holding something. Eye recognition is great. It can tell twins apart because it uses the iris for matching, but think of cataracts, or maybe loss of an eye, or a swollen eye. Perhaps you've gotten stung by a bee and you have a swollen eye. So, all of these are really great methods for identification, but they also have things that could prevent them from, everyday situations that can prevent them from working. In this picture, I have a woman with a face covering and really bright blue eyes. Multifactor authentication, MFA. So this is another means of identity verification. We have SMS phone text messages, and I'm not very good with accessibility because I don't know what SMS stands for. I've just always called it that. And now that I'm reading it out loud, I realize I should know what that means. But it's your phone text messages, your cell phone text messages. It's texted codes might be a little bit less secure than our authenticator apps, but they're a common solution for their ease of use and wide availability. This trade-off might be worth it for users who have difficulties typing codes quickly. Screen readers and text-to-speech functions are more likely to work seamlessly with a native app like texting. And many of us have our texting apps on our computers, so we can take it right from the computer and put it in the computer versus having it on the phone and then, trying to transfer it over. We have email based, your security code is sent through an email, not the most secure thing, but it's an alternative. Authentication apps. Sometimes a separate app is sent your security code, and this can be on the same device, but sometimes to your phone or iPad. So in this image, it's a screenshot of my home screen, and you can see that depending on what project I'm working on, I have a multitude of authentication apps that I can use. Do I like one over the other? No, they're all just as cumbersome. They all have the time limit. They all have numbers that make it hard for me to translate going from one device to another. We have tokens. Sometimes these are connected tokens. They require users to plug in a dongle into their device, and it may require a second step like pressing a button or using a biometric challenge, but they do not usually require users to input a code, making these multi-factor authentication processes more accessible for our users who live with motor, visual, or cognitive differences. And then we have single sign-on. We see this as SSO. It significantly reduces the friction by only requiring one login per action per session, but it still has the issues at that first sign-in as many of these multi-factor authentications. But again, it's one session. You can use it typically all day, so it eliminates the need to do the passcode each and every time you change apps or change accounts. So let's talk about scanning IDs and certificates. Lots of us work remote now. Lots of us do online banking. Lots of us prepare for our flights ahead of time through the internet. So this can be a bank app when depositing a check. Who wants to go to the bank to deposit a check? We just want to take a picture and have it be done. During the shelter in place and during the pandemic, we were providing vaccination records to go places, to go to a concert or maybe to fly. We have certificate-based signatures. Sometimes we see these as PDFs, but they require a valid ID. As we all get new jobs, we are asked for our I-9 documents, employment eligibility verification, several forms of ID to be submitted to prove your identity. But sometimes folks with, a palsy, like a shaking hand, are unable to hold the document, or the user agent, like their phone, still enough for the computer or the app to scan the document, making it challenging. A person with low vision may not be able to line up the scanner or put the documents in focus. I live with this with my bank app. I can very rarely get my check to be in focus because I can't see it enough. It takes me 4 or 5 times to get that done. And, depending on your disability, that's enough time for you to give up on that task. In this picture, you can see a passport. So with a lot of these authentication methods, there's the need of inputting data. So WCAG 3.3 talks about input assistance, and it really is around helping users avoid and correct mistakes around inputting their data. So we have 3.3.1, which is a level A, error identification. If an input error is automatically detected, the item that is in error is identified and the error is described to the user in text. The error message should be as specific as possible, providing input Providing information about input errors in text really allows our users who might be blind or colorblind to perceive the fact that an error occurred. So we want to be careful about what our messages look like, that they're not identified by color alone. We want to make sure that our error messages are in line with the error, so folks don't have to find the error message up and down the page. And this success criteria may help people with cognitive, language, and learning disabilities who have a difficult time understanding the meaning represented by icons and other visual clues. So we want to make sure that we really have enough information on the page for people to feel that it's helpful. 3.3.2 talks about labels and instructions. And again, this is a level A. Labels or instructions are provided when content requires user input. So think of our form. We're talking about form labels here. We want to have important cues and instructions that will benefit people with disabilities and people without disabilities. Providing clear and unambiguous labels and instructions, including examples of expected data formats, like what should your phone number look like? What should the date look like? Remember, we're in a global society, with the internet, so not all date formats are the same. So providing some placeholder content that explains what's anticipated for the date or the phone number is very helpful. And this really helps all users, but particularly those with cognitive, language, and learning disabilities to enter that information correctly. 3.3.3 is error suggestion, and this is a AA criteria. So if an input error is automatically detected and suggestions for the correction are known, then these suggestions are provided to the user unless it would jeopardize the security or the purpose of the content. Now that's a mouthful and that's something to think about, but there's a link at the bottom of the page that you can find out more information about. But providing your users information about how to correct input errors allows users who have learning disabilities to fill in a form successfully. Users who are blind or have vision loss understand more easily the nature of the input error and how to correct them. And people with motion impairment can reduce the number of times they have to change an input error. So the more clear and precise our labels are with expectations, the less errors there are, and the less times people have to re-enter their data. So passwords. What can we do about hidden passwords? We can have label form controls. We can allow copy and paste functionality, and we can also allow tools to fill in our credentials. This is a screenshot of Florida Drupal Camp's email, and there's a box that says enter your password, and all of the letters and numbers are disguised by dots, but there's a show password checkbox underneath. So if you select that box, you can see the password and make sure that that's correct. But when we allow people to take a password from a password manager, it reduces the friction of error because it automatically fills it in versus having to type in those very complicated passwords, those pick 16 letters with or 16 characters and they're all mixed letters and I have to have some symbols. Those can be very complicated to look at and enter yourselves. So copy and paste functionality is great, along with tools to fill in those credentials. So a couple of notes about alerts, modals, and other pop-up-y things, because, these can be major barriers to folks, especially when these things aren't programmed right. But we're not talking about programming them right. We're talking about how to make them more accessible for security. So we have a basic principle for WCAG, principle 2 being operable. User interface components and navigation must be operable. And again, I have some specific criteria around it. We've got 2.5.5, which talks about target size. This is the AAA, but I think this may be changing in 2.2, but I might be wrong. It might be changing to a AA. But can someone on a mobile phone who might have large fingers close the window? Or someone who has, that palsy we keep talking about, are they able to get to the target with their mouse easily? 2.4.3 talks about focus order. Does the user have to tab through the whole entire web page to get out of that module, that pop-up that's blocking their screen? Not very good UI. If you have a lot of components on your web page, people are not going to want to have to tab through all of those things, especially big mega menus if you don't have that programmed right, through all the links, through all the footers, just to close that cookie banner or that modal or that subscribe to our newsletter box. 2.4.7 talks about visible focus. This is along those lines of the keyboard as well. Someone who uses assistive devices, where are they on the page? We want to have a visual marker so people know where they are. If they're filling out a form, if they're in the pop-up window, they want a visual focus of where that cursor is. 2.1.1 talks about keyboards. This is level A. Can a keyboard user access the dialog or pop-up? Can they get in to the pop-up at all? Can they get to the X to close it? And then the opposite lines of that is 2.1.2, which talks, it's an A level 2, is no keyboard traps. So once they get into that pop-up or that form or that window, are they able to get out? They got in, but can they get out? That's called a keyboard trap, where they're not able to get out of whatever space they tabbed into. Excuse me. An accessible modal dialog is one where keyboard focus is managed properly, and the correct information is exposed to our screen readers. You can use HTML and WAI, ARIA, ARIA. They both can be used to provide the necessary semantic information. And then you can use CSS and to adjust the appearance, and JavaScript to adjust the behavior. And remember, all of your components should work if you have CSS and JavaScript turned off, okay? That's just a side note. Pop-ups. JavaScript pop-ups windows should only be used if they add significant advantage in the functionality of your web page. And again, they should be functional even if JavaScript is disabled. We want people to have access to the information even if they have JavaScript disabled. And they could have JavaScript disabled for a number of things. Maybe they're on an older browser, or their internet isn't that great, or maybe lots of JavaScript is distracting and they just want all that movement turned off. So if a pop-up opens a new window or a new tab with either like that target attribute or a script, we want to add a label to the link that people know it will open a new window or tab. Many users on both screen readers and visual browsers are confused when they don't realize a new window is open, and then they're unable to use the back button. So let those people know ahead of time that they're opening a new window or tab. We want to avoid disabling scroll bars and resizing options. Readers with low vision may need to resize the windows to accommodate larger text. So we don't want to disable those scroll bars, but at the same time, we don't want scroll bars on both vertical and horizontal. And that's a whole nother talk, but we don't want to disable those scroll bars. We want to provide a no script alternative that uses a plain link to direct users with JavaScript disabled to the appropriate information. I have a screenshot here of opensource.com. And before we made it more accessible, we had this pop-up to subscribe to our newsletter, but you had to tab all the way through the page just to X out that newsletter. And that newsletter modal obscured the content on the page. So it was pretty annoying. So status messages, this has another whole guideline dedicated to it, 4.1.3. We want to make sure our users are aware of important changes in content, and we do so in a way that doesn't interrupt their work. So when appropriate roles or properties are assigned to status messages, the new content is spoken by the screen readers in a way to assist our blind and low vision users. Most sighted users can observe text peripherally added to the viewport. So some possible uses of status messages, it could be a message about the number of search results returned. You could be informing the user that an application is busy or unavailable and they need to come back. Or maybe it displays information about the progress or completion of a process. More simply, this means that the status messages must be clearly labeled as such in the website's code base. So the assistive technology, things like screen readers or Braille devices, can identify them and decide how to relay them to the user. And again, it's about disruption. We don't want people to be reading a web page and then all of a sudden this non-essential alert comes up. So we want to be discriminate about how we use error messages. So we want to provide a means to turn off those non-essential alerts. Something else we want to do is we want to ensure the use of color and icons are not used as the only means of conveying the information, the importance of the information, because not all people are able to distinguish between colors, not only for our colorblind or our low vision users, but also there's people who have a glare on their screen. And then icons like, okay, so I just opened the inspector window yesterday on a website. I hadn't opened an inspector window in forever. And there was all these new icons, no idea what they meant. And some of them didn't have a tooltip. So I was like, I had to click through. And so my adventure that should have taken 5 minutes to figure out if a picture had alternative text turned into a learning opportunity of what all these icons meant. So make sure that the icons are clear and make sure that that the information is not solely in color. So there's a picture here of a Drupal admin interface where I've updated an article and a banner comes up and it says article 10 get tips we can't live without. But we can see that the color contrast isn't really great in this. So not all of our users are going to be able to distinguish this. So I'm kind of wrapping things up. So what have we learned today? Bottom line, we want to provide our consumers, our website users, our readers with alternatives. We want to allow users to copy and paste details into username and password fields. We want to allow users, excuse me, I have to take a drink. We want to allow users to use external references for their details, either as an aid to memory or to avoid transcription errors. We've all been there entering our credit card numbers, 5445. Sometimes we do 5454. We want to allow our users to enter content from documents on their computer or password managers. We want to provide our users with a method to authenticate that does not involve a password, maybe. In cases where users cannot remember their password, provide an option to log in using a link sent to their email address. Those are sometimes called magic links. We want code input fields with the appropriate type. We want to make sure that people know what's anticipated, what's expected of them to type into a field. Password field should have a type of password. Number field should have a type of number. Providing the correct input types allows operating systems and assistive technology to provide the correct method for input. For example, the numerical keyboard, it's nothing like when you want to enter your flight number and your flight number has a letter in it, but you're only allowed to enter numbers. You got to make sure all of those things match. And we want to pre-fill fields where the data is available. For example, your browser or your operating system remembered email and password combinations, or maybe perhaps one part of the form you've already filled in your shipping address, and it's asked is that the same as your billing address. Give them options to have it be refillable where it can. And when using multi-factor authentication, that MFA, make sure your users are given advance warning of the requirement and the time window. Ensure that enough time is provided for users to verify without requiring a new code. Again, if short time windows are required for security, provide an accessible alternative. For example, sending that link to the email address so they can bypass that. Allow users to access requirements to be added to an exemption list for our MFAs. We can provide alternatives to Captchas. Users with visual impairments may not be able to use those image-based Captchas to authenticate themselves because they're not able to perceive the images. Users with cognitive impairments may not be able to understand how to interpret the representation of characters. Remember those characters we saw that were all blurry? So they might not be able to understand and interpret those. Provide a text-based alternative to image-based Captchas. If you're able to, use a Captcha system based on a simple instruction instead, such as checking of a box. Are you human or are you a bot? And whenever possible, don't use Captchas at all. Avoid cultural specific Captchas. Avoid requiring users to identify objects that are specific to one cultural context or have regional differences in appearance. For example, asking British users to identify images of crosswalks may be a barrier because crosswalk is an American term. There's a partial image of a Captcha up here, but we can see that there's an input box. We can see that there's a letter challenge at the top, but on the side, there's a bar that you can refresh the image if you couldn't understand the first image. So maybe that would help. There's also an icon so you can hear it. So you'll be able to hear the letters and then be able to type them in. And then there's a help button there that allows you to some of the times it allows you a different way to input, gives you an alternative. So again, with timers, allow people to pause, stop, and pause, stop, and replay. And then just whenever possible, provide your users alternatives to one, because some things work for some people and they may not work for others. Again, thank you. In the slide deck, there are additional links for information about some of the things I talked about. And again, on some of those slides, there are links available at the bottom that go into more detail about the specific criteria around the concept I was talking about. And there's a LinkedIn code here, a QR code if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn. I love answering questions, and I love helping people who are new to accessibility find resources and connect them with networks. Thank you. And thank you again to Beth, Heather, and Lizzie. And it's Q&A time because I see Malcolm on the screen.
Thank you very much, AmyJune. I'd just like to remind all attendees to please post your questions in the Q&A portion of Zoom. It's on the Zoom menu bar. We have a question in chat already. In your opinion, what is the best alternative to a CAPTCHA, in parentheses, to proving the user is human?
I do like that checkbox, the I am a human. And the thing is, like, biometrics, I think, is a really good way, if that's possible. Eye recognition is one of the best ways. There's less barriers to eye recognition, but the CAPTCHA thing, just having that simple checkbox, you can get to it from your keyboard. Screen readers can use it. They're clearly labeled, and it's just one stroke versus, having to parse numbers or letters or a picture.
Thank you very much. Got another question. Do you find some of the most commonly overlooked accessibility aspects of security methods for digital accessibility that could be a kind of quick win, in quotes, on your journey to ensuring an accessible user experience?
Yeah. So I think quick wins and getting if you can work on one ticket and update your website and make it more accessible than the day before, is having those form labels and having them grouped together, and then having that placeholder text around forms. Forms are very hard for a lot of people. And I think, adjusting, having that placeholder text and having the inline error messaging. And I know that's quite a few, but it's all around that form, because a lot of these inputs are forms if you think about them. But improving the way we talk about how to input them, having that placeholder text, and then having them grouped in a way that a screen reader can get to them in a predictable way, that's a huge win. But inline form errors is huge because, especially on those long forms where you're like, what did I do wrong? And then you have to find the error at the top, but having that error right next to that input, I think is clutch.
Yeah. And then related to that question, we know that accessibility is an ongoing process. Are there any security methods that are kind of coming out or being developed that you find particularly innovative or useful in regards to accessibility?
Admittedly, I don't have that answer. I've been out of developing websites for a year and a half now. It wasn't part of my position. For me, what was most exciting was when we had things like biometrics come out, and I know that's old technology now, but having those options available for folks really makes it handy, because I'm a hospice nurse by trade. And so how does my paraplegic, how does my quadriplegic get into their phone? Well, we can help them with an eye recognition, and then they can get into their phone, and then they can use, taps and things like that. So it makes it really handy, I think, the biometrics part. But yeah, I think I've been out a little bit too long to know what's really, really new.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one more question. In MFA multi-factor authentication, you mentioned in quotes dongle and token. Could you recap that?
Sure. So sometimes what you'll have is say you're part of a VPN, where you have to have your computer real secure and logged in, and it pings something back and forth. Or you have to enter that code every once in a while, the VPN code. Instead, you can have a little, I'm just going to use a USB stick, like a dongle, that you plug into your computer once during the day, and you hit one code, and then this dongle is pre-programmed for whatever you need. And so the authentication process goes through the dongle, so you only have one user input. So it makes it, it's kind of like that single sign-on where you do it once and you have it available during the day. But the dongle, you don't move, you don't do anything, but maybe once you've shut your computer down and the next day you open it up, you either, tap something on your phone, it makes it activate, or you have to type in a code.
Thank you very much. Malcolm again, and as we're wrapping up the presentation, I just wanted to thank AmyJune again for such a wonderful presentation. It was lovely to see all of the different perspectives around security and all the different factors that you have to take into account to ensure an accessible experience. I want to thank our support team as well, our sign language interpreters and captioner. Thank you all for your lovely work. For upcoming IAAP webinars, we have on June 27th, Embracing the Ethos of Accessible Built Environments in Emerging Economies, Stepping It Up, and that's part of our Built Environment series. And then on July 6th, we are kicking off a new mini series, An Accessibility Journey, with Getting Started, Understanding the History of Web Accessibility. And that mini series will be free as well. On July 18th, we have Designing Accessible Navigation Systems through Wayfinding, Signage, and Orientation, and that is part of our Built Environment series as well. And I recognize several names in here that are members, and I just want to remind anyone that is not a member of IAAP, we'd love to welcome you to our network of over 5,500 accessibility professionals in over 100 countries. And members get discounts on live webinars, complimentary access to our webinar archives, free courses, access to our Connections networking platform, and more. And if anyone is interested, they can find more information on the IAAP website or email info@accessibilityassociation.org to learn more about how you can become a member of IAAP. So I want to thank everyone again, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.